Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 17 of the High Frequency Podcast, and thanks to everyone who subscribed over the last month. Last month's episode with Miss B absolutely went off. The amount of downloads that we had on that episode is the highest that we've ever had, so I just want to thank Miss B once again for coming on, and everyone that's listened, and all the new subscribers and all the new listeners. I really appreciate it. It's an absolute honour to be even introducing Josh Butler to the High Frequency Podcast today, let alone having a full-on chat with him. I wanted to get Josh on the podcast as he's got some deep embedded roots within New Zealand, and he lived here for a large part of his youth, so it only made sense to get him on the podcast. He's usually in New Zealand yearly now, and he's the part owner and founder of the up-and-coming electronic music festival, This Kind of Day in Queenstown. He had some unexpected success back in 2013 with the track that you've probably all heard, Got a Feeling, and it led to him scooping multiple industry awards from Beatport to DJ Mag. Since then, he's been labelled as one of the UK's most premier house music talents by none other than Pete Tong himself, and consistently championed by the likes of Steve Lawler and Heidi. He's had releases on labels such as Knee Deep in Sound, CR2 Recordings, Hot Creations, and Defected, including some remixes for some huge names like Carl Cox and collaborations with the legend himself, Kerry Chandler. It's safe to say that Josh is a staple worldwide name in the house music scene, and he's working away at trying to grow the New Zealand scene, much like myself. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to the podcast for episode number 17, Josh Butler. Okay, so Josh Butler, welcome to the High Frequency Podcast. Thanks for being here.
Cheers, mate. Good to be on.
It's a bit of a fanboy moment, mate. Honestly, I can't believe I'm actually saying Josh Butler, welcome to the High Frequency Podcast. It's mental.
That's cool. It's good to be on, mate. I enjoy what you're doing with the promoting house music in New Zealand, and I'm all for the New Zealand scene. You know that.
Yeah. I'm quite keen to dive into that. And as everyone knows that listens to the podcast, I've constantly kind of preached that this podcast is all about showcasing New Zealand-based and Australian-based artists. And you're the first artist that isn't New Zealand-based. But the reason why I wanted to get you on is because you do have roots here, and you do have quite a heavy involvement in the New Zealand electronic music scene. So we'll dive into that at some point. But you've just built yourself a new studio. How's that gone?
Well, building, it's still happening. Hence why I'm not in there at the moment. I'm just in the living room today. Otherwise, I would definitely be in there. But it's coming on. It's probably 80% done now. A lot of the hard work is out the way. But it's on hold now. I actually go on tour in a couple of days. I'm going to North and South America for a few weeks.
Oh, wicked.
So the studio is on hold until I get back. Although I'm itching, mate. I'm chomping at the bit to get it done now.
I bet. So why build a new studio? What was up with the old one?
I actually haven't had a permanent studio for over a year now.
Oh, okay.
I had it set up in my living room for a while. When the lockdown happened, I had a sick studio in town, but I was like, probably not going to be able to travel there much. So I brought everything home, set it up in the living room, and then I had that for a year or so, and I was like, this can't be a permanent fixture. It's like taking up half the house. So I've converted the loft into a little space, put a window in there, and then soundproofed it a bit. And it's just going to be I'm not expecting it to be like a super high soundproof room. It's never going to be that with a loft roof. But it's going to be a space just to jam, mate, and just have all my machines linked up and just get creative in there.
Yeah, wicked. What kind of soundproofing have you done in there, considering I kind of saw a picture of it on your Insta. Is it like got brick walls?
Yeah, well, since built a stud wall, so now partition wall, 100mm rock wool in all the cavities. And then next job is in acoustic plasterboard.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many levels with soundproofing. I was originally thinking of like decoupling the walls. So you basically build a room within a room, but then I'm like, it's probably not worth it.
A lot of effort, that as well.
Yeah, it's a lot of effort and a lot of expense, actually.
That's what I mean, man. I mean, I've done a really poor job with my studio. I've got in the corners of the rooms, I've just got big rolls of mass loaded vinyl. Have you had some of that before?
Yeah, yeah, I looked into that stuff. No, I nearly bought that to lay on the floor, actually. You think that worked?
Well, my mate gave me this. I didn't actually invest in it, but it's pretty expensive stuff. And he said, he said it worked really well for his studio. And to be honest, this room's pretty reverby, so anything that you put in here is going to make a difference. And I've just loaded it up with like blankets and stuff like that.
So you still got it in the roll?
Yeah, I probably need to do something with it, but I was just thinking of using it as like a really basic bass trap.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. But I think if you unrolled it and put it against the walls or on the floor, it would be a lot more beneficial. That because I read a lot about all this stuff, and mass loaded vinyl was mentioned loads.
Okay. I'll give that a go. I'll see if I can be bothered. It looks like a complicated job, but
This is it. It's like how much of a job do you want to do with it? Because you can really go to town with soundproofing, and sometimes it's not really worth it.
you do obviously a lot of mixing and mastering though for people though. So do you find that you have to have a decent quality studio to be able to do that?
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be a certain level,
Hmm.
but I know because of the shape of the roof, it's never going to be. High ceilings are more desirable for a proper studio. But yeah, this is going to do for the next couple of years, and then the ultimate goal is to get back to New Zealand. To be honest, so
Oh, really?
yeah, I'm not going to throw everything into this studio. It's just going to be semi temporary space.
Okay. Well, let's dive into that because I'm quite keen to know a little bit more about that. So, obviously, I mean, Josh, you really don't need an introduction to the podcast. I'm sure every single person that's listening to this knows exactly who you are, but might not know a lot about the history of how you got into everything and how you've got to where you are today. Because you're arguably one of the most consistent and successful producers that is been in our kind of niche of house music, deep house, whatever you want to call it, for a long period of time. You see artists come and go and they do a couple of EPs, then they drop off and they lose interest or they find other hobbies. But you've obviously done this as a career for a long period of time. So give us a bit of an idea on how you started this whole thing and how it's kind of got you to where you are today.
It was never really intended to be like an international touring DJ. I knew I wanted to be involved with music somehow, whether that was working for the BBC or having my own business or like being a sound engineer for live events, whatever. I was always into dance music and I was producing tunes and stuff in my bedroom as a hobby. As a kid, really, instead of playing PlayStation games, I was making beats on EJ and Music 2000.
Wicked.
And then, yeah, so around that time when I was playing around with EJ and Fruity Loops at the time, now FL Studio, my mum and dad said we were moving to New Zealand, and I was probably like 13 at this point. And when I got to New Zealand, we moved to Kerry, which is a pretty quiet town in the north.
No way. My partner is actually from Kerry.
Oh no way!
Yeah. Her parents live up there at the moment, so I know that place well.
How old is she?
She's just turned 30.
I might know her. Probably went to school with her.
Oh, you reckon?
Did she go to
How good
Kerry
would
High
that be?
School?
No, I actually think she moved up there after high school. She was in Auckland for a while,
Okay, yeah, but
so
probably not.
maybe not. But I'll ask her.
That's hilarious. But yeah, I went to Kerry High School anyway. And obviously at first you move there, you don't know anyone. So I spent a lot of time just making music after school, and got pretty good at it. And then obviously there wasn't much of a scene in New Zealand. Uh, well, I was trying to make some friends and connections as best as I could. There was a lad in my school called Brendan, whose brother had an internet radio show in Auckland, and he played one of my tracks at one point, even though his show was a drum and bass show. He played one of my trance tracks on it. And at that point, I thought I'd made it. I was like, right, fucking buzzing. That's it now. I knew there was something there. And so, yeah, probably got to like the age 17 and finished school. And, mum and dad were like, what do you want to do after school? And I said, I really wanted to try and give the music thing a go. And it was never really going to happen in New Zealand. So I moved back to the UK and moved in with my granddad for a year or so.
Oh, yeah.
I started going to college at St Helens, and that was kind of like that was the start of everything, really. I started meeting other people who were producing, and um, Eddie Halliwell. I don't know if you know of Eddie Halliwell, trans. We used to go to the same college, so the tutors kind of knew a few people in the industry, like Eddie, and one of the tutors at the time, he was also the engineer for Mr. Scruff.
Oh, really?
So
Okay.
yeah, all these little pieces started to come together, and I was like, wow, it's actually quite in reach to have a career within music. It just went from there, man. And I ended up getting one of my tracks signed to a small record label when I was at college. It was a small label, nothing ever happened with the track, but it was just a little stepping stone towards something.
Were you producing house music back then, though? Oh, were you because
Yeah,
okay, okay,
it was a little bit. Yeah, I mean, it was more trance. Yeah, but there was bits of house. Um, and as I was doing all this, it was still just a hobby. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to be a DJ, and I didn't think I was going to make a job of that side of it. Um, I always thought there'd be a more traditional job at the end of the education, but I think the timing of house music exploding worked really well for me, because, well, I'll just backtrack a bit. So after college, I went to uni in Leeds, and again, just kept meeting more people in the industry and the music scene. I started DJing out a lot more, playing in clubs, and things are just snowballing from there. Got a track signed to a bigger label.
Where were you playing in Leeds? Did you play at Mission in Leeds?
I did, but not until a bit later. My usual gigs were like Stinky's Peep House.
Oh, yeah. Stinky's is
Um,
gone now, isn't it?
yeah, I think it's a car park now,
Can't believe it. Like, I
unfortunately.
used to spend all my Sundays in there.
Yeah, what a place. It was a messy little club, that.
Yeah, yeah. And Back to Basics originated. Did Back to Basics originate there?
It did, yeah. So I was going to a few of those basic nights.
Yeah.
Was going to like Tidy Tracks nights as well. I used to love a bit of hard house.
Okay.
Mint Club was always a regular.
Yeah.
So I got to play at Mint Club. But that's kind of when I knew things were starting to like take off with the DJing for me, because I was getting booked at Mint Club, which was where I just used to go and party.
Yeah.
So when I was playing there, I was like, yes, mate, I'm fucking
Made it.
actually doing something with it now. Yeah, I've made it. um, but yeah, things just sort of snowballed from there. And then I was sending demos out, because I've always made music. Producing's been the main thing for me, not the DJing. Um, and I sent a track out to Chase and Status's label, MTA, it was called.
Okay.
It's not running anymore. But yeah, they actually called me. I was driving up Kirkstall Hill back from Morrison's one day, and I got a call off an unknown number. And he said it was Will from Chase and Status. And at first I was a bit like, oh, whatever, it's just one of my mates winding me up. And he was like, no, we really like the track that you've sent, and we want to invite you down to London to come to the studio and come and meet everybody in the office and that. Because they had a proper setup with the label. They had a big office in London near the London Eye. They had studios underground. And there used to be Pete Waterman's offices, actually. I don't know if you know Pete Waterman in the Hit Factory.
Why do I know that name? What was he
Because
doing?
he signed loads of big pop acts in the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, from like Rick Astley to
Okay.
I can't remember. I might have to give it a quick Google.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty cool, though, that they just called you up and randomly said, oh, yeah, come down to London. That's epic.
I know, because I was just firing these CDs out to everyone and everybody, really.
Was that like the first couple of demos that you sent out then?
No, I'd sent a lot out.
Okay.
They were just the only one to get back to me, really. Thank God it was it couldn't have been a better label to get back to me, because they
Yeah.
really did put so much into that track. And I mean, that track was Got a Feeling for people that know it. It ended up being a massive hit in 2013. I can't find a list of Pete Waterman's records, but yeah, he had a company called the Hit Factory, and no joke, when I went in, there was gold and platinum discs all over the wall. It was fascinating.
I bet that was a pretty surreal experience walking into a place like that and, just being called by these people who you never thought you'd hear from.
Yeah, I mean, that was my first real taste of the music business and seeing how it works. People at offices or people in an office at the computer doing things and talking about music. It was amazing. I was like, that's kind of where I saw myself working in a label like that, actually. But it turned out I ended up getting signed as a producer. And yeah, like I said, that track went on to do some really big things. And that was kind of the springboard for my whole career. The stuff that came before it, the track on off recordings and all the stuff around Leeds definitely was a foundation. But yeah, I think that track took me to an international audience, and then I got a booking agent off the back of that. I was getting booked in like Belgium and Holland and all around Europe, man. Luxembourg, just random little places that I never thought I'd go to. Started getting booked to go and DJ there.
That's mental. It's just kind of like, I guess it can all happen so fast for someone if they just have one track that actually does really, really well. I've seen that happen to a few different artists before. Some artists can slug along and try and keep it as underground as possible and constant release on vinyl and make sure it's only 300 copies. And then there's other artists that just want to get their music out there, which I kind of I respect a little bit more because they're kind of just wanting to make sure that they actually get a career out of it. So were you working a job at that time as well, or was that? Oh, did it just turn full time kind of overnight?
I think I just left uni at that. I left uni the same year, and so I was working part time. I had a few different part time jobs around those few years. But yeah, so I was working part time, and then the other part time work was like teaching Ableton and engineering for people. I was doing a lot of that actually, like people who were interested in music but couldn't produce. They'd come to mine and they'd pay me for the day, and I'd basically make them a track. They'd bring a couple of samples and they'd give me direction, and we'd sit together all day and build a record. So that was kind of like that was paying the bills, to be honest, until I started DJing a bit more and quit the part time job and then stopped taking engineering bookings. I just got too busy doing my own thing. But yeah, I think the going back to like having a big record, that was definitely the case then. I don't know if it is now, because you got to remember social media wasn't really around when I was doing it. Your Facebook was there, a kind of, but it wasn't as important. You didn't have to post every day or like update your breakfast, and there was none of that. So I think it was a bit more organic, and there was a lot more radio stuff happening actually. Remember getting an interview on Radio One, and so that there was a lot more listeners on national radio at that time, and people didn't have their own platform. It was more about interviews in things like Mixmag and traditional press. Where now I think you can do it through your own platform. You can, if it's all about being a social media wizard now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't cope too well with it, to be honest, man. I mean, how old are you at the moment, if you don't mind me asking?
33.
Okay, so I'm 36 this year, so I just don't do this social media thing well, man. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I didn't grow up around it or whatever. I don't know, but and like you say, when we were going out in what 2008, 2007, 2009, whatever, and partying, no one really took the phones out. It wasn't really a thing, So I wasn't really consumed by it back then, and I guess I've just kind of always tried to keep the music thing separate from social media, but you just can't these days. How do you cope with that?
It's a ongoing battle, to be honest. Because, like I said, you have to find content as well as making music, and all the rest of the stuff, networking and what have you. Um, yeah, content is king, as they say.
Yeah. Do you find though that if you release a good EP, for example, I mean, you've obviously got a record label, which I want to talk about in a bit as well, but do you find that if you release a good EP, that'll carry you on social media for a little while without having to post things like your breakfast, for example?
Well, this is it. I try and stay in that old mindset, my original mindset of when I started breaking through. I try not to worry too much about social media and posting too much, and just let the music speak for itself. If people like it, then mint that. If not, then whatever. I've enjoyed making it. That was
Yeah,
always how it was. So
yeah,
can't
yeah,
really get too hung up on it, you know. But very, very grateful to have made it this far in such a competitive industry. So um, yeah, I'm not going to try and keep up with the Joneses and post 5 times a day on Instagram. I've got other things to do.
It's interesting though now because I mean you'll know as well as I do that um, there is there's such a plethora of production content and tutorials online these days.
Oh, so much
It's
of it.
crazy, man,
Yeah.
and I think it makes it so accessible for the youngsters that are very good with social media that they can take off very very quickly if they want to put time and effort into it, which is great. But also the competition's high.
Yeah, there's a lot higher now. Now you can just open up your Instagram feed and learn how to make a track. I asked ChatGPT the other day how to make a track, and it told me step by step.
No way.
I actually said a donk track. For those that know, like kind of Scouse House type track, and it even told me how to make the donk sound, mate.
No
It's
way. That's
unreal.
insane, man. You can't even comprehend it, can you? I haven't tried Chubby GBT. I'm kind of scared of it. Um,
I don't use it much, but I was intrigued. Yeah, I thought
yeah.
how much does it really know? But yeah, it knows everything.
There was what was I gonna I was just looking on my Spotify for some of my favorite tracks by you. Would you and I remember when Call You Back came out. Would you say that's one of your most successful tracks? Because I heard it everywhere, man.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And everyone was remixing it and everyone was doing edits of it and stuff. And I was just like, holy moly, this track's everywhere.
Yeah, that was it was the track of the summer for that year. I think it was 2016, and God, it was everywhere. That was another big moment in my career. Really, very grateful that it took off because it was just a B-side record as well.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah,
Mental.
you just never know what track's gonna connect with people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my favorite track by you is Link, weirdly enough.
Oh, nice one.
I just think it's such it's like, it's one of those tracks that there's nothing complicated about it. It's just got a really good groove. It's deep. It's a real night starter and
The tricky
starting, I
one, isn't it?
guess, yeah, I love it, man. It's great. I've always loved that track.
Well, a lot of the stuff I do on Rejected is like that. Actually, it's a bit more experimental and a little bit more in the electronica side of what I do. There's actually one of the ones I did on Rejected was based around. Let me get this right. So it was it was 2020, and me and my brother went back to New Zealand, and we went for a walk one morning. My brother was still a bit jet lagged because he arrived a few weeks later than me, so we got up at the crack of dawn, and we went down to the beach, like near Browns Bay, Long Bay type area in Auckland. And it was deserted, mate, for all morning. We walked for miles. We walked down there to Takapuna from Browns Bay. And even at 10 o'clock, it was deserted. And then there was one woman that came down onto the beach with a dog, and she was like, "You two need to get off the beach and up to high ground because there's a tsunami coming." Like, what the fuck? So we got quite lucky that morning, but the story is I ended up making a track um, based around that. And, I went back that afternoon and got on Ableton and just jammed out, and that ended up getting signed to Rejected.
Hmm.
So a lot of the tracks I do on that are a little bit deeper, more experimental, and usually got a little story behind them.
But Origins is your main label, right?
Origins is one I own, yeah.
All right. So Rejected isn't yours.
Rejected is Joris Vaughan's label.
Ah, okay, okay. Sorry, I might have misunderstood that. I thought Rejected was yours when you were talking about it because I hadn't heard of that label before. Weirdly enough.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's a pretty underground label, really, but it's been around for a long time. But yeah, Joris lets me experiment a bit more. So on that EP anyway, that one I was talking about, there's one called Tsunami, and there's one called Shipwrecked, which
Yeah.
is around that festival in New Zealand, because I went to that around the same week, same couple of weeks, and very inspired by all the music there.
Yeah. Do you know Logan, who runs the
Yeah,
Shipwreck
I
Festival?
speak to him online sometimes. Never met him though.
Hmm.
Yeah, we've had a little conversation on Facebook and that.
Yeah, he's a good man. He runs a pretty cool venue out in Onehunga, the Silent Studios place.
Something warehouse.
Yeah, that's right. It's
Silent
yeah,
Studios, is it?
yeah. It's I think it's got the only Function One sound system in New Zealand.
Wow, nice one.
But yeah, he's coming on the podcast next week, hopefully as well. So I'm going to try and get him on because it's been a long time coming. I've been chatting to him about it for about a year, but he's a busy man. So
Go and see Silent Studios next time I'm over.
yeah, man, you should. So let's get into the New Zealand stuff because obviously I bet a lot of the listeners are probably thinking so far, okay, how has Josh got roots in New Zealand? So you've obviously got a bit of a tie with the Electric Rush brand. We obviously had Gwillem, although I always pronounce his name incorrectly, so I'm just going to say Gwillem
It would
because
be Guillaume.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I just always forget how to pronounce it.
Or just G.
G,
That's what I
that's it. Yeah,
call
it's
it.
easy enough. And he was on the podcast a couple of months ago, and he was talking a bit about the festival and how you're involved with that. So,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about like how you're involved in the New Zealand scene and how that all came about.
Okay. Yeah. So, as I said, I went to school there. I did all of my high school years over in Kerry, which I loved, and then, as I said, I explained, came back to England and my career started to take shape. And my dad was still in New Zealand. He's been there ever since we moved originally. So me and my family are all permanent residents. I've been since we were kids. And but I didn't go back for many years, actually. And then G actually booked me for Electric Rush. I think it was the second ever Electric Rush. He booked Ben Pearce for the first one, and then he booked me. I think it was either the second or third anyway. Um, and I was blown away. I was like, wow, it's come full circle here. This is kind of where I honed my craft in New Zealand, and now I'm getting booked to fly across the world and go and play there again. But I've never been to Queenstown though. Obviously, I grew up in the north, and then yeah, me and G just hit it off, mate. We've just been friends ever since. We speak every other day, and I've done for nearly 10 years now.
Awesome.
And he's booked me every year. So, yeah, just started spending a lot more time in New Zealand. And, so I'll obviously play for G, and then I'll go up to Auckland and spend a week or two with my dad. And, that was it for a few years. And then when 2020 happened with COVID, I spent the first few months at home on my own, locked down. And then when the second lockdown happened, I was like, no chance, because New Zealand was still open at this point. So I was like, no way, I'm being home alone again for fucking God knows how long. So I took a one-way flight to New Zealand and lived with my dad for a bit. And me and G started bouncing loads of ideas around for, expanding Electric Rush and the house scene in general in New Zealand, really, and how we can contribute more to growing this sound on that side of the world. So that's kind of where the festival idea was born.
It's been pretty successful so far. The festival,
Yeah,
though.
yeah, we did the
Yeah.
first one last year and pretty happy with it, man. It's a slow burner, I think, but for the first year, it was really good, man. It was a good vibe. We had Heidi over, we had Dorley, and not only did we do the festival, we did a conference as well, music conference, which was more around education. We had about 30 people in a conference room at the QT Hotel, and Dorley, who's an official Pioneer sponsor, he did a sick demonstration on that sampler, that Pioneer sampler. So there was little workshops like that. I did something about Ableton and jamming ideas quickly with Ableton. Um, Frank Booker was there as well. He did some Ableton stuff about mixing. So yeah, just generally the whole weekend of that festival is geared around electronic music. We try and take over Queenstown for the weekend and yeah, just promote dance music.
It's so good, man. I mean, you'll know as well as I do that New Zealand really needs that. I mean, when I came over here for a couple of years in 2010 and 11, I had a few residencies at clubs in Wellington, and the scene was better. Well, I'd say better loosely. It wasn't better. It's just we had a longer, at that point, we had a 6 a.m. closing time, right? So obviously, longer opening hours, more clubs make more money at that point. And when this whole 4 a.m. license to trade came in, a lot of the clubs closed down. And you see Wellington now, man, we don't have any. There's none at all.
I was speaking to somebody about this the other day, actually. Since 121 closed, there's nothing there now, is there?
Nah, man. I mean, I used to
Not
host.
for our kind of music.
Well, I used to host the high frequency nights at a place called Laundry. If you ever went there,
I didn't actually.
no. I mean, that place closed down as a result of something nothing to do with the pandemic. But yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I recently did a high frequency night in Auckland, first one at Ink Bar, where you've played a couple of times. It's such a special little vibe in there, isn't it?
It's one of my favourites, mate. One of my favourites in the world because it's so intimate. It feels like you're in your own living room.
Exactly. And I bet you don't play small gigs like that over in the UK anymore.
No, actually. And because the DJ booth is at the end of the bar as well.
Yeah.
Just getting handed tequila shots every 10 minutes. It's always a messy night. I love it.
Do you miss those small gigs, Josh? Because obviously, since you rise over in Europe and the UK, obviously, I'm sure you don't really play many smaller intimate gigs like that anymore.
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes I do still play them. Trying to think of the last one. I actually can't think of the last time I played somewhere like Ink Bar. But there's a few over the years that come to mind. Played my fair share of like basements or quite a common one was basements of restaurants.
Oh yeah,
So there's been a few like steak restaurants with a basement underneath. They turn into a nightclub.
epic.
They were cool.
Yeah,
Done a few of them over the years, or even where the restaurant itself closes and then they turn that into a club. There's a lot of that. But yeah, it's been a while since I've done them. Excuse me. I do miss it, yeah. It's always a good intimate vibe. But that's why I always go back to Ink Bar as well.
Yeah,
And same with Raglan, man. The yacht club in Raglan's similar vibe.
well, it's the same owner, isn't it? Andy owns both
Yeah.
the same places. So I've not been to the yacht club actually, but I've heard some good things about it. So yeah. What are your thoughts on, I know this is a really broad question, but what are your thoughts on the New Zealand scene at the moment? Because you came over last year, eh?
Yeah.
Do you reckon it's growing?
I think it's been in a tough spot actually since COVID, and I think a lot of the world scene is, to be honest. I think into the club scene anyway. Festival scenes are booming, especially in Europe. But yeah, a lot of the clubs are closing down. Like I heard, it's the same story as 121. You know what I mean? They closed the club, started a festival. I heard there's the promotion company in Ireland. They used to have a nightclub called District 8. Don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No.
It's a pretty prestigious nightclub, but they've closed that now, and it's just a festival. So I think the way the scene is across the world, people tend to go out big once or twice a year, or maybe maybe a bit more than that. But it's not like when we were going to Sankey's, it would be every week, maybe twice a week. Sometimes we go to Sankey's Friday and Saturday night.
Miss that
The
place.
weekly club scene isn't, and same with Basics. That was what Basics was built on, which is, for those that don't know, Back to Basics is the most long-standing club night in the UK. Literally the oldest weekly club night in the UK, but that doesn't really exist anymore. Just generally, I think, is more geared around big one-off events, or even Warehouse Project sits somewhere in between the club scene and the festival scene, doesn't it? Because it's a
Yeah,
seasonal event.
seasonal thing. Yeah, it's September
It's
to
a
December.
big venue, but it's not it's not week in, week out all year.
Do you remember when it was under the Piccadilly train station? That was the first
Yeah.
venue, wasn't
Well, that's what I love
it?
about that as well, actually, because you move around venues, and that's kind of what G does with Electric Rush, isn't it? He doesn't stick
Yeah,
to the same venue. But yeah, in terms of the scene, anyway, I think it's been difficult because people don't buy tickets anymore either. So in terms of a promoter, it's a huge risk taking on an event, especially in New Zealand with an international DJ. It's not cheap to bring people over there. And if you don't know how many people are coming through the door until the night, it can be quite a daunting feeling. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It would be nice if there was more pre-sale tickets, so it would be a bit more of a stable scene that way. But yeah, I think the festival thing is great because, especially again in New Zealand, there's so many cool spots like that Shipwreck Festival. What an amazing location for a party! It doesn't get much better than that, does it?
absolutely. Yeah. I I hear you, man. I recently thought about bringing an international artist over. I was in talks with the guys who were bringing Michael James over to Australia, and I'd spoken to Michael, a couple of times via Instagram, and he tutored me in the past on music production. Really wanted to bring him here. He was super keen on coming, but just the way the scene is at the moment, and having a look at some previous events that have happened in the similar genre, the ticket numbers have been not hardly, they've hardly sold at all, and the promoters have lost loads of money on the event, so I just couldn't justify it.
There we go.
So, but you guys with the festival, how far in advance do you sort of like start promoting that, or what did you do last year?
Well, it's already in the works now.
Okay,
We're probably working a year out. It's probably taking the best part of 12 months to put something like that together. But Ink Bar's but maybe one of the exceptions here, isn't it? Because that is a weekly place, and it's, from what I understand, it's pretty busy most weeks, and it's been an institution way before we were going out. So it does still exist, but I think maybe Ink Bar back in the day anyway wasn't international DJs. It was just the local scene where that's a lot less risk. Um, so yeah, it's a tricky one, man. And I know what you're saying about booking Michael James. Not everybody knows who he is either, so it's not as if you're booking Fisher. you know,
yeah, man, I don't think I'd ever do that anyway. But it's not like I'm booking Josh Butler,
but you know what I'm saying. There's a lot of moving parts, and obviously drum and bass is the staple in New Zealand at the moment. Anyway, hopefully we can sway that a little bit more our way at some point.
We're trying. We're trying.
But yeah, I mean, even the drum and bass events, I don't think they're really club nights, are they? A lot of it is festivals or big arenas.
Yeah, I mean, there is a few. There is a few sort of drum and bass club nights, but I don't think they're as consistent as what we would consider consistency.
Yeah,
Weekly. Um, there might be every couple of months or something, but I think you're right. But what I do think, though, which you've obviously realised yourself, is that we've got so many individual promoters and brands in New Zealand now that are pushing our kind of sound, and I do think it is growing slowly but surely. Really, I just think that it's always going to be a difficult challenge because there's only 5 million people here, and the electronic music scene is a small niche in its own right. So it's always going to be a bit of a
and the
challenge.
house side of it is even smaller.
Exactly. Yeah. Just got to keep pushing it, eh?
It's all about what we love at the end of the day, and
Hmm.
if it feels right to promote these type of things and to still be involved with that scene, then you've got to do it for your own love. Even if there's only 50 people dancing in a room, I'm happy with that. I'm doing it
Yeah.
for I'm doing it because I enjoy it as well.
100%, man. Yeah. 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 Um, So, what are the future plans with the festival? I asked G briefly about it. He didn't give me much insight there.
Yeah, well, to be honest, we're sort of just taking it as it comes. We haven't got a grand plan really. Again, we're just sort of going with our gut, and G has obviously built an amazing community around Electric Rush already, and yeah, we're just going to continue to try and expand. And I've met a lot of people in the dance music scene over the years, so using my connections to bring people over to New Zealand, and especially with the conference as well. Just that whole weekend, really, we just want to try and grow that. And yeah, no real grand plan as such, but just do what feels right. And if it works, great. We'll reassess at the end of this year, and then if it went well, then we'll plan again next year.
Nice. That's
Simple as
good.
that. Yeah.
You've got a nice point of difference with the conference, though. No one else is doing that here. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, well, obviously G's from Barcelona, I'm from the UK, and there's a lot of that over in Europe. You have ADE in Amsterdam, you have Sonar in Barcelona, even Miami has got the music conference. Um, I think there is one in Australia. There's a music conference, but it's not as big as the other two. So, we just wanted to bring something like that over to the Southern Hemisphere because they've been such an important part of not only me growing as an artist and meeting connections, but G as a music fan and promoter. He goes to Sonar a lot, and they're just really valuable events. It's a place where the whole industry can get together and meet each other face to face, rather than just like email or text or whatever. It's where a lot of the ideas happen. People have meetings, and yeah, different things grow from events like that.
Yeah, man. So you said you might be moving back over here permanently. Is that a thing?
I think the plan would, yeah, eventually is to settle back in New Zealand.
How would that affect things for your bookings and stuff like that, though?
Well, to be honest, mate, I don't want to be touring forever anyway. I've done it for
Hmm.
15 years or so now. I've been so lucky to see the world, traveled the world 5 or more times. I've lapped around the planet 5 or more times now, playing records. It's been amazing. But there's more to life than just doing that over and over and over again. I have different goals and different aspirations as well. So yeah, I've got a couple more years left of doing it yet. But even doing it in New Zealand, I was still playing New Zealand and travel to Australia and to Asia and stuff. Maybe even to America. I don't know, man. Like I said, there's no grand plan. There's never been a grand plan for any of this. Just winging it.
It's the best way to
but
do
I
it.
but I do know I would love to be back in New Zealand, and I love that place. Love the people there. I've got some great friends there still. Some of my old school friends I'm still very very close with. So yeah, mate. I just like this. I spend 5 months a year there at the moment if I can. Um, I'd like to extend that to 12 months at some point.
New Zealand will love to have you here, I'm sure.
Oh, nice one.
You'll have to play for a high frequency night at some point, maybe. I'll have to get
Well,
you
why
in for
not?
that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, man. So, will you still continue with the label whilst you're over here?
Yeah, as long as people are interested, then yeah, absolutely. We've got some amazing artists on board now, both established and up and coming artists. We're in a great position now that we're actually helping people to break through and build their own careers. People like Ben Sterling,
Oh, yeah.
he's killing it now. He had his first release on Origins, and now he's playing with like Marco Carola and Jamie Jones. So that's what I would keep doing. I think I would move more into the label side, maybe mentoring and management. That's realistically where I think my career would go, rather than me be doing all the traveling. Because traveling's tough, man. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to North and South America for 3 weeks next week. It's going to be exhausting. Even going to Madrid this weekend, I told you just before we started recording, I did like just under 24 hours in Madrid. played at Fabric through the night, and then left the hotel at 10 a.m., landed back in the UK at 2 p.m. It's tiring, mate.
Yeah. I was talking to Kerry Wallace from Sash. He was on the podcast last month, and he was saying this exact thing. He was just saying, I talked to a lot of these bigger artists, and they all speak about how tiring the lifestyle can be. But of course, when we see you guys on Instagram and stuff like this, we only see you when you're at your best.
I took some pictures on my last US tour of 3 weeks deep into a tour, late nights, early flights, and I'd look fucked, mate. I look so unwell. And I took a few pictures, and I was like, do I start posting these on Instagram to show the reality of you've not had any sleep, maybe you've just had a half an hour nap, and now your alarm's gone off to get up and go back to a club. It's so much fun, but you are running on adrenaline a lot of the time, and there's only so long that can stay at a level. So realistically, I think I would move into management and help younger people to do what I've done. Yeah, because they've still got the stamina to do that, to not sleep for a fucking week.
Yeah.
And DJ all night.
Well, I mean, with your connections, that could work out really, really well for the people that you want to promote. But I think that's a really important message. And I said this on the last podcast, I think it's an important message for the younger lads or girls who are getting into this at the moment, who don't truly realize what they're in for if they want to be doing this whole tour thing. I think a lot of the artists are kind of thrown into it without fully realizing what they're signing up for. And it can be pretty exhausting. And, it can't be good for your health doing that for years and years and years without any breaks.
Yeah, health and well-being was never really a subject when, even when I was doing it. But before that, through the 90s, people like Sasha and Digweed, their touring schedules were insane.
Yeah.
But health and well-being now, it's a lot more prevalent in just the general conversation of society, isn't it? People are a lot more health conscious.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a great thing. And people tour smarter these days. I know I do anyway, where I can. I'm a lot more educated about my health. People like Patrick Topping come to mind. He does big stints where he's sober. He works out a lot. Same with Sam Devine. People are definitely a lot more conscious of it now, but you have to be if you want to do it into your mid-30s, 40s. If you don't look after yourself, you're digging yourself an early grave. To be honest, it sounds a bit dramatic, but it's there's truth in that. Unfortunately, I know people who've passed away over the past few years because they weren't looking after themselves.
It's a big thing is the sleep thing, though, man. I think over the recent years, I've really started to understand and hear about how important sleep is. And we all get told this when we're younger, but no one gives a shit. When you're 22 and you're in Sankey's every single weekend, I don't care. I just
I think
thought,
you feel invincible at that age, don't you?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I was up to all sorts of mischief at 22.
Weren't we all, mate? Weren't we all? Did you actually, talking to Sankey's, I know I'm going off topic, but did you ever play at Sankey's back in the day? I never saw you there.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, I had a residency. I actually had a residency at Sankey's Ibiza, but it all started at Sankey's Manchester. I was playing semi-regularly there.
Right.
God, I used to love that place. One of the best nights I had there was me and Bontam back to back, and then Green Velvet afterwards.
Oh, wow. What year was that?
An awesome night. I couldn't tell you when that was. It was those years were a bit of a whirlwind.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. Yeah, when Sankey's got that remake and they switched the DJ booth from one end of the room to the other end.
Yeah.
And
They actually did that a couple of times, I believe.
Oh, yeah, okay.
They did that a few times over the years and mixed it up. But you know what? Actually, Spectrum was my favourite room.
Upstairs. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first gig in Sankey's. Played Spectrum.
Was it?
And then I eventually got to the main room. But I always think Spectrum was a better vibe, actually.
Pretty trippy in there, wasn't it?
Yeah, with the roof.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man, honestly, that place is what that place and Mission's what got me into electronic music in the first place, because the vibe in that main room of Sankey's, I've never witnessed anything like that. Even sometimes in Fabric in London, I've never witnessed the vibe that Sankey's had. It was just
Same.
it was just that everyone was so educated about what they were going there for, right? And everyone on that dance floor knew exactly what they were signing up for the night. They were there for the artists who were playing, and they saw it right through till 5 in the morning. It was magical. It's great.
I actually think Sankey's was way better than Fabric, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
I had some good times in Fabric, but I think there's a lot of like techno tourists at Fabric where they're going because it's Fabric. They don't really know the music, or they're not necessarily even interested in the music that much. It might be their first ever club night, but Fabric's such a massive name. People just go. Yeah, I do feel it like it attracts some of the wrong people at times. It can be a bit sleazy in there.
I get
Actually,
it. Mm.
in my experience, yeah, I've seen some sleazy stuff where in Sankey's it was just all about music. You know what I mean? There was never any of that. It's just people were just fucking having it to techno.
Yeah. Good times, man. Do have a couple of other questions just regarding. I'm actually wanting to go back to your production methods, and the reason being is because I know that a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are quite young producers and are really getting into production at the moment. We've got quite a surprising amount of people in this country getting into production, and Australia as
Amazing.
well, which is great to see. But one question that I don't think I've asked anyone on the podcast, and I can't imagine a better question to ask someone, to ask you, to be honest, because you've been doing it for so long. Have you, throughout your career, ever come across creative slumps, in a sense? I guess where you've
Oh,
not been
mate,
able to
all the
produce
time.
music. Oh, do you? Okay. How do you manage them?
Usually just take time away, to be honest. Try not to stress about it. I'm saying this on, now, um, 15, 20 years into producing, because I have stressed about it in the past. I've tried to battle through it and just like, even if you've got no ideas, I've tried to sit at the bloody computer, and it's not really worth it though. You don't, unless you're brand new at it and you're still learning the software and you're learning how to produce. Maybe there's some benefit in still pushing through, because you might have some like happy accidents, or you might figure something out. But once you know how to make music, at the stage I'm at, I just take time away. I'm not going to forget how to make music. I know that the creativity will come back and I'll get some ideas. You just need some inspiration. So just go for a walk or something, or, even take a week out, just like do other stuff. That's the best advice. Yeah, try not to think about music, or well, try to think about music production, but go and listen to lots of other types of music, and yeah, get outside, go for walks, see your friends, maybe go to clubs, and just soak it all up, man. And then I have no doubt that it will come back.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually. I know that people will be asking that question at some point in their music production journey. I'm definitely asking that question right now. I've only been producing 2 years. I should have started this ages ago, man. I should have started this years and years ago. I always had the intent on doing it, and I've just signed a couple of EPs, which I'm really really pleased about. But now I'm kind of like, oh shit, I've just signed these EPs, but I've got nothing to follow them up with. I've got music, but nothing that's worth releasing, and I'm kind of in this creative slump. And you sort of think to yourself, "Shit, how long is this going to last?" Like, because I've not experienced this before. So it's whilst it's not good to hear, it's also quite good to hear that you've experienced that in the past, and it does come full circle. So I'm sure the people will be pleased to hear that.
Oh, it's very natural to. Yeah, I don't think you could. I don't think you can stay creative forever. There's always going to be peaks and troughs to it. It's just how you manage them. I think listening to music, or going, maybe even just going to a charity shop and buying some old records, and listening to them and finding some samples, and then that might spark some inspiration.
So
Lots of different ways.
What's your? No, that's all right. What's your current favorite piece of studio kit?
SP 2400.
That's a new one. Did that come out last year or something?
A couple of years ago now, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's I actually bought it from a guy in Queenstown.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I used to have the SP 1200 back in the day,
Hmm.
which is obviously like a seminal piece of gear. A lot of the hip hop records from the 90s were made on that. All the Todd Terry records were made on that. So it's got a sound,
Yeah.
but it was such a pain to program. It took floppy disks, so even sourcing the floppy disk was a nightmare. It only liked certain brands of floppy disks as well. You couldn't just buy any old disk and put it in because it'd have a fit. So even sourcing the discs was a pain. And then when you did get it, you have 12 seconds of sample time, which can be a good thing, actually, I have to say. Limitations is also a great way to spark creativity.
Hmm.
Um, but it'd literally take me all day to program a 4-bar loop.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting rid of that, kind of reluctantly getting rid of it, but it was just sat there gathering dust. And then this company, I think it's called Isla or
Yeah, Ala Instruments or something, right?
Allah, something like that.
Ah,
Yeah, they released
yes, yeah.
an updated version that takes SD cards and
Hmm.
USB. So you've got a lot more space for sample time. Well, actually, I have most of my sample library just on a SD card for it, and yeah, I mean that's by far my favorite bit of kit now. I actually don't have it with me. It's somewhere in between here and Hong Kong at the moment on a ship.
Oh, no way.
We just shipped it back from New Zealand. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that back.
Have you experimented with any of the Electron stuff?
Electron.
Yeah, like the
Oh,
Digitact and the Syntact and stuff like that.
do they do that analog warmth thing?
Yes, that's one of their effects units. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
don't own any of it, but I've played with one of them. Yeah,
My first proper piece of kit was a Digitact that I bought recently, and I found it just so much better for my creative process as opposed to just literally just being inside the box all the time. I don't think I can ever go back to just being in the box.
exactly, mate. Yeah, I think it's the same with mine. Yeah, so that Electron, they do a really good drum machine as well, don't they?
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be a drum machine, but it's actually a
Right.
sampler drum machine. But yeah, it's
Yeah, I've
pretty
seen
cool.
videos and stuff of their gear. Anything like that to get you out of the box. It's a great way for you to get back into creativity. It's sitting at a computer all day. It's the difference between making music and programming music, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're in Ableton, it can become like just programming a piece of software.
Hmm. And I think it having something like actual hardware helps you to understand synthesis. Not that you need to these days, but I think it really helps when you understand it because you actually understand how to manipulate sounds and create sounds way better as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
What does your creative process look like at the moment, Josh?
there's different ways. I have different workflows, to be honest, depending on what mood I'm in. One of them would be all in the box, Ableton, or software. Another one is hardware or combinations of pieces of hardware and software. It really depends, and I try and mix it up so I can stay excited about it. Actually, if I'm just using one workflow all the time, I get a bit bored. So yeah, sometimes I'll just pick a piece of gear and just like, okay, I'm only using this today. Maybe like the TR8 or um, what's the Korg Electribe. I love that thing.
They're rare now, man. I've been looking for one of those for ages. Can't find them here.
Really,
Yeah,
there's a few on eBay. Might not be cheap anymore, but the ones with the tubes in the top,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
wicked bit of kit.
Managed to source someone sampled all the sounds from one of those pieces of hardware, and I've got the samples, but
Not the same though.
no, it's not the
It's
same.
not the
You're
same
right.
because the effects on it, the
Hmm.
effects unit is the main thing really, and you can just mangle. You can obviously program drum loops, but then you can just mangle it up with all these effects. That's why I love that bit of kit anyway, because you just get unexpected results.
Yeah, yeah. And it kind of takes the guesswork out of it as well, and the thinking out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, you just grab a knob and just fucking twist it and see what happens.
Yeah. Wicked. So you've got a massive tour coming up. So you play in South America. Where is it? Just South America tour?
It's actually just Ecuador. So I'm doing 2 cities in Ecuador, Quito and then Montanito for the Lost Beach.
Lost Beach looks amazing. That club looks crazy.
Oh, it is, man. Yeah. Well, it's like literally one of the best clubs in the world, according to DJ Mag. I think it's the top 25th club or something. It's amazing, mate. It's like most of it's made from bamboo. It's right on the beach in the middle of fucking nowhere in Ecuador, and it's like paradise, mate. It's so good, But it's got an amazing Function One sound system. Like the guy really cares about his sound. So yeah, anyway, doing that, and then I actually fly to Montreal after that and playing at the Grand Prix, which is a bit of a random one.
Oh,
One of
that is
the after
random.
parties for the Grand Prix with Duke Dumont, and then from Canada down to North America, and playing loads of different cities in America.
And you've got a pretty busy summer lined up by the sounds of it.
Yeah, a couple of trips to Ibiza as well, playing at Elro, at Amnesia. Oh god, there's loads of shit, man. Flying to Poland for a couple of gigs and Croatia. It's going to be a good summer, mate. It's actually a nice balance, though, because I'm not gigging every single weekend or not gigging 3 times a week like I used to. Still got some good time at home just to be in the studio and be around my friends and family.
That's cool. Nice.
It's a good balance. Yeah, and then, that takes me through to November, really, and that's when I'll be heading back to New Zealand.
So you're coming back over here for a holiday at the end of the year?
Well, yeah, working holiday. Do festivals, some shows. Yeah, so I'll be there from probably end of November to February.
Cool. Okay. Well,
Hopefully, try and meet up with you then.
yeah, absolutely. That sounds pretty good. Um, so, just to round off the podcast, then, because I know there's been so much that I've wanted to ask you, and but I also didn't want to just be the guy that asks a ton of questions, and I did want to have an actual conversation with you, which has been nice. But I do want to ask a couple of questions based on the listeners. So, as I said before, I know that there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are relatively new or young to, let's say, DJing or production. If you had one bit of advice that you could give to the newer producer, let's say, what do you reckon that would be after all your years of experience in this industry?
Just try and if you're really into music production, try and create your own sound. Don't copy people because there's so many carbon copies of shit these days. I'm not interested in that anyway. Don't want to hear the same tracks again and again. I already do. I get sent so much stuff and it's already just the same as the last. Try and do something new. You know what I mean? Mix your influences outside of dance music into your dance tunes. If you're into jazz, sample jazz records, or if you're into classical, try and incorporate that into it. I don't know what it is. For me, it was always like trance and reggae. How do I fuse reggae and trance together? And it turned out to be like a dubby kind of house music, But that's the best advice. Do you put your own personality into your music? That's what it's about at the end of the day. Nobody wants a carbon copy of the last track.
100%, man. I think people, including myself, we've not stressed out, but thought about having our own sound and really trying to find that sound, but not knowing how to achieve that. So it's nice to hear you say, bring your other influences in from other types of music that you like into your music.
It's just practice. Yeah, you find out the parameters of what you like and where you want to meet in the middle. And then it's just about putting it into practice. The first 100 tracks that you make might be crap, because mine were. And then there's one that goes like, all right, that's it. That's where the sound needs to be.
And what about for the newer DJ? Do you have any suggestions or advice that you can give to them?
Learn to play on vinyl.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I know. That's it,
yeah, couldn't agree more. I think the technology does too much for us these days, right?
Yeah, the barrier to entry is very low these days. So if you really care about what you're doing, try and stand out from the crowd, you know.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's awesome, Josh. Thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, yeah. Good to chat to you.
I will put all the links to your social media. Not that I'm sure everyone isn't following you, but all your social media, your SoundCloud, Origins. I'll put that all in the show notes of the podcast, and I'll also do that on Instagram as well, just so you can go and follow Josh.
It might be worth mentioning I've got a Patreon as well now.
Oh yeah, okay. Tell us a bit about it.
There's a nice little community growing on there. So we do like track feedback, and I give away samples. You know, you were saying you've got a sample pack of the Korg Elect Tribe.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do packs where I've recorded my gear through, you know, nice valve compressors and stuff. So I'll give away them sometimes, or little bonus tracks, just little bits and bobs. So yeah, if you're interested in that, go and have a look.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm sure there'll be people interested. That sounds awesome. So yeah, flick us the link to that, Josh, and I'll make sure that I share that with everyone and promote that a little bit for you. But yeah, I think you'll have to. I'll have to sort of find out if have you got any gigs in not in England, in New Zealand booked for the end of the year yet, or?
Yeah, I can't say what it is
You
yet.
can't say. Okay. Well, I won't ask you.
Good ones, I should say.
Okay,
But yeah, I
interesting.
can't tell you anything more. Sorry.
Cool. Okay. Well, anyone that's listening, have a look out for Josh's sneaky gigs, and also the Electric Rush Festival as well, which is actually called This Kind of Day.
Yeah, so that one is the one I can announce, obviously, because I'm part of that. So that's on the 9th of December, I believe.
9th of December. Okay, so it's a bit earlier this year, is it?
Yeah, it's a bit earlier this year.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so 9th of December. Everyone get your tickets. Don't miss out. It's going to be awesome.
Nice one.
When does the lineup get really revealed for that, Josh?
We're going to start dropping the lineup in the next few weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
That's the one.
Awesome, man. Okay. Thanks very much, Josh. And yeah, I will hopefully chat to you again soon. Thank you everyone for listening today. I really appreciate your support. If you haven't already rated the podcast, please do go over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this podcast and give it a good, honest rating. The more ratings that we have on there, the more exposure that this podcast gets to the world. And as a result, the New Zealand-based or Australian-based artists and everyone involved in the scene here on this side of the world gets more exposure. I really enjoyed this chat with Josh today. As you can tell from the podcast, he's just such a down-to-earth, genuine, kind dude that just has a real passion for house music and genuinely wants to grow the scene here in New Zealand, which I think we can all chip into that and feed into that and obviously work as a collective to try and grow everything here in New Zealand. But it's great to hear that he's going to be back over here permanently in the future, and I'll definitely be looking forward to seeing that come to fruition. Thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate your support, and look out for next month's episode on the 20th of every single month.